Good evening, everybody. Welcome you all for this webinar on captivating session to unravel the secret of an effective implementation of ISO27001, which also will cover the migration from 27001, 2013 to 2022. On behalf of IAM, I really appreciate people who have joined much earlier. With your permission, we would probably give a couple of minutes for the other folks who have registered but in the verge of joining. They are between meetings, but at the same time, we wanted to accommodate them as well. So give us a minute and then we will start the session. In the meantime, I would request everybody who are attending this webinar to have their microphones on mute. If at all, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, and Mr. Vignesh, who's coordinating for this webinar, would allocate the response to your queries. Of course, we do have a question and answer session at the end of the session. You can also raise your queries, or if you want to have it written down, you can type on a chat window. We will definitely respond it as when we have the time to respond to. Excuse me, can you put your microphone on mute? We get an echo. Profile as Suri. Yeah, thank you. If you can put your, yeah. Okay, thanks for joining. I think we have given the time. We know that people will be eventually joining, but for the sake of time, just because we have slated this for 60 minutes duration, I think we would have to start the session. So the agenda for today, we'll talk about the introduction. I'm going to cover about an objective, the speakers who are going to be filling in for this webinar, the overview of 27001 2022, what's new, and then we definitely would want to talk a little bit more on the challenges that most of the organization face, whether in the new implementation of 22 or in migrating from 2013 to 22. And then we have a very good case study in the migration, and then followed by the QA session. I am Ganesh Narayanan, the co-founder and the director of IAM, with about 28 years of experience in an ITS, banking, compliances, oil and gas and process industry. I have the veterans, Mr. Thanikay Nathan and Vaidyanathan. Both Nathans are intellectual, very sharp, witty, and then they are eye for detail. We are happy to have them a part of this presentation as well, and the webinar as well. They are the co-speakers, Thanikay Nathan, who is a compliance lead, who have worked on multiple such compliance projects ranging from 27001, HIPAA, HITRES, PCI DSS, and more on the compliances as well, including CCPA, CPRA. Mr. Vaidhi, who is more focused on quality, cybersecurity, in-depth detail on privacy of multinational privacy. So we are really happy to introduce them both, who would also be contributing in this webinar. This is something that we get across from most of the organization. So do I need this? I mean, do I need to really have compliance in place? Or do you have to have a regulatory framework in place? Do you have to have 27001 in place? Is it mandatory? I mean, how is it going to really help my organization? We have never had any breach so far. We have never had any information security incidents so far. So why is that we need to spend so much amount of time, money, effort in putting a baseline structure, even though this is not a regulatory requirement, but this is a best practice standard. So why it is required is the question that we keep getting from most of the clients. Undoubtedly, yes, this may not be mandatory, but eventually this is going to be made as a norm. Just how how the information ISO quality standard came up into existence. Initially, it was not taken seriously, but when people found the benefit of following a quality management practice 9001, almost every company, right from startup to large enterprises, have adapted 9001. Similarly, in the information security framework scenario, even though this has been existing for the past 12 years or more than 12 years, we find the threats, emerging threats, compatible threats that's prevailing in the market with more sophisticated attacks. So it is definitely required for an organization to at least have a baseline best practices. So our request would be to say that, yes, your organization would have to adapt a baseline security framework, so you can start with your 27001 as a baseline framework. And how is that going to really help your organization? Is that you may have some level of security, but 27001 framework or any baseline framework is going to probably enhance your overall security posture. Plus, this is a norm that every client and the customers of the client have started asking in the RFP, asking that, do you have a quality management system in place? Do you have an information security management system in place? So it used to be one in a 100 kind of a RFP response, but nowadays we find that this has become a de facto standard. Every RFP, they ask whether you have ISO 27001 implemented or not, irrespective of whether it is 2013 or 22. So people expect when they are going to collaborate or they're going to partner with your organization, they expect you to have a baseline standard for which even 27001 would probably help you. And definitely it's going to really help you with a competitive advantage. I mean, if some of a customer or your competitor who is not practicing the best practice or do not have a certification of 27001, probably your client would probably trust you because you may have this best practices standard in place for your organization. So that would definitely help. The vital point here is that the cost saving, rather than investing on a breach as a response, it is better to have this one as a proactive measure. So spend the cost on the controls that you want to implement rather than going behind and doing a forensics, which is humongous and a huge expenditure that you never would want to do. And then, of course, compliance not only talks about the best practices framework, there is always a mapping process for your regulatory requirements, legal requirements, whether it is state or federal, you may have to with them. So that is part of the framework that cuts across both horizontally and vertically. And of course, the risk management is something specific for each and every organization, each and every business. You need to have a proactive way of identifying risk. It could be on a daily basis, it could be on a quarterly, whatever the timeline that your organization decides. At the end of the day, it has to reduce your business impact and also enhance your revenue. And in stating all these points, it is definitely required at this point in time that most of the organization who are thinking about going in for 27001, you'll have to shift your gears and then start, speeding up the process in implementing, because this is the norm of the world that we have seen. There is a tremendous request that has been coming to us as an entity asking for implementation of 27001 and also migration to 27001, 2022 standard. So we see the pattern. So we thought we will communicate to all our stakeholders and people who are really interested in this initiative. Just before I move on to the next slide, I would probably want to find out how many of your organization already got 2013 implemented, or how many are looking forward to 2022. You can probably put it on the chat window so that we can look into that on the statistics. Having said that, I'm just going to move on the overview. I presume most would know about 2013 standard and why we are moving to 2022, the migration challenges. Initially, the 27001, 2013 standard, the title was only information security and security techniques. So it was only limited to the information security management system, but limited to information security. But if you see the title that has gone to renaming and restructuring, It not only focuses on information security, it talks about information security, it talks about cyber security, and also it talks about privacy protection. So there is a good amount of cyber security initiatives, cyber security best practices controls brought into the new standard, and a good amount of privacy controls that has actually been included. Gentlemen, if you could put your mic on mute, please. Thank you. So the new version is not limited to information security, but it touches upon the cyber security and the privacy protection as well. All new certification organizations who are looking forward either to migration or to embrace the new certification would necessarily have these started right away, because 2013 implementation is no longer advisable or no longer been entertained by the certification body from November 1st, 2023. So you have to get yourself certified with the 2022 new standard. And if at all you are in a transition period, you would probably have to have everything completed as a transition audit by 31st of July 2022, so that by October 31st, 2022, your even though the 2013 will become null and void, will expire. So for all practical purposes, by July 31st, 2025, if you're trying to adapt or migrate it to from 2013 to 22, you would have to have everything completed on or before the 31st July 2025. So that's the deadline that you have. How do I do it is the next question. I am in midst of 2013. So when do I have to start? What are the ways that I can do? Is that the certification body would probably do it on part of a surveillance audit, or they can do part of a recertification audit if you have the time. If you think that this is not possible, you can call in for a special audit. But the mandatory things that you need to cover, even though if you have 2013 as a practice, you need to do a gap assessment once again to effectively look forward for the cybersecurity and the privacy controls, plus the new variations. And also the statement of applicability have to be completely updated, top, bottom, left, right. And the risk treatment plan has to be updated, not the risk treatment register, but the plan, because now you have a compensatory control which has to have the cyber security initiatives and the privacy protection. So all the more looks like you'll have to have a revamp of whatever the existing document. But people who have got the experience in handling and maintaining 2013, I wouldn't worry much about it. It's just you need to get the knowledge of what is new, how do you handle 2022, and then you can sail smooth in the migration process of 2022. Having said that, a quick recap of what is new in the 2022 revision. The clauses 4 to 10 has only changed very slightly when compared to 2013 to 2022, but this is non-negotiable, which means the 2022 says that you definitely have to have all the clauses implemented from 4 to 10. There is no negotiable. It has become mandatory. Even though it was mandatory in 2013, there is a lot of emphasis on people cannot neglect, avoid any of the clauses mentioned explicitly in the new standard, right? The Annex A control, even though there is a moderate change, the moderate is definitely, it takes a beating for organization which probably has got a superfluous SOA. For them, this could be an extensive work. The number of controls, rather than using the word decreased, I would say from 114, it has been consolidated into various buckets to 93, rather than using the word decreased. The new controls, they have placed it in four different sections, which we will elaborate in the next session, subsequent slides. There are 11 new controls. While none of the controls were deleted, they were only merged and consolidated. So the focus for all organizations would definitely be on the new 11 controls. But having said that, since because this is consolidated into the 4 different sections, there is a lot of fusing of the existing controls into the 4 different sections that we will talk about, right? So The old revisions, if you see on to my right, which was published in September 25, 2013, the new revision was published on October 25th, 2022. The clauses remain the same, which is 11 in 11. The controls, Annex A control is now from 114 consolidated to 93. The initial section in the 2013 was 14, which is now reduced or fused, I would say, or consolidated to 4 in the Annex A control. So you would find the degree of change at the bottom. No changes to the 34 controls, which is staying the same. There is a small revamp or a small delta changes to 23 control, which are probably renamed for better clarity and for adapting to the new threats and vulnerabilities. There is a 57 merged controls, and one control is being split for want of clarity. The major is at 11 controls, which has the repercussions for the below controls as well, because that's having a cascading effect. The new security controls, which will be covered in subsequent slides, this is for a quick pictorial represents. So the new controls talks about threat intelligence. They're talking about information security for use of cloud services. It was not probably given elaborate in the previous 2013. ICT readiness, even though the business continuity was sporadically been implemented by most of the organization, here it is explicitly required your information and communication technology readiness in the event of your BCP, and also the security, effectiveness during the time of your BCP. So that is in specific. Physical security control monitoring has become with a mandatory effect on that one. There is a lot of emphasis on configuration management. There is a lot of emphasis on information deletion. How long are you going to have the information? What is the shelf life period? Have you mandated? Why it is so? What is your privacy principle? What does it say? What is your regulatory requirements? Everything is embedded onto the information deletion. Data masking, this is probably a lift and shift from the GDPR, Global Data Protection Regulation, EU Global Data Protection Regulation. But of course, you all know that the Indian Data Privacy Act has also come into picture. So this would probably hold good for all companies who are implementing 2022. You need to formally look into your IT Act 2000 as well as your new privacy regulation. So you'll have to look into those two models when you're actually looking at the new controls, which talks about more of the regulatory requirements, talking about the data leak prevention, monitoring activities of all your infrastructure or your application with mobile application, everything. Plus your web filtering, which was initially not there, and your secure coding. The development, there was a control in 2013 which talks about development, secure development, but here they are talking emphasis on the secure coding, which talks about your application active and dynamic coding application, your web application testing, more emphasis on those categories as well. So the high-level overview, which we have an example next slide coming up. So when you look at your statement of applicability, most of the organization probably would have had this in their tools, an application, or as an Excel or in a Word document. But you need to have a rejig of your SOA with these information in hand, even though the standard says this is not mandatory, this is going to be for a list and view option. But because the new controls have got a tinge of the NIST framework, so you could find that the controls type, they've added new controls type, which talks about preventive, detective, and corrective for each and every control based on the risk assessment that you do. You need to have the prevent, whether it is the control is preventive, detective, or corrective. Similarly, for the information security properties, we already used to have the triage, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That still is there for the information security properties. Because they have introduced a cybersecurity property, cybersecurity controls, there they have looked into the NIST framework, where there is 5 different concepts where we need to do from the cybersecurity points of view. How do we identify? How do we protect? Then what are the controls to detect? What are the controls to respond, and controls to recover? For the same risk, you will have to undergo all these, regulatory plan, do, check, act principles. And then they have categorized for the want of view the operational capabilities, which talks about governance all the way up to legal. So I don't want to be reading the slides. This is available. Will you share the slide? And then the security domains, which is once again, this is non-negotiable. You need to look into which security domain it is addressing, whether it is the governance, the management structure, or if it's talking about a protection of a device, or if it is defense that you have the tools or the perimeter that you put in place, or is it something on the resilience structure? So that is once again 4 different mandate domains that they are looking into. So this is something new. Most of the organizations may get confused when they're implementing the controls based on the existing statement of work. So the challenge would probably come into how to interpret this. But of course, when you keep when you already have 2013, and when you look into your statement of applicability of 2013, and then when you do a migration, it becomes easy. Of course, it requires a little bit of knowledge on doing so. I think we have, if I want to have a recap, I'm just going to go for a quick recap. We did talk about the requirements of such standard good practices in place. We did check on the 2013 versus 2022, the controls, how the 114 controls have been now consolidated to 93. The efforts could be the same. You need to have a good in-depth knowledge of the migration process. You have till only the October 2025. By that time, if at all you have 2013, need to migrate it. So the drop dead date for all organizations, if you want to go in for a fresh fresh implementation, you can start anytime. But the organization who are looking for migration from 2013 to 22, your drop dead date would be the 31st October 2025. So that is the recap that I wanted to let people know if they have joined late. I'm just going to give an example for the statement of applicability, because the threat intelligence is something that was captured new as per the new standard, for the sake of understanding if we are going to put a control in place, how this is going to be done for one such controls that your organization would have to emphasize. So you look into the preventive controls. The preventive controls we'll have to look into qualifiers of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So implementing of access controls, you'll have to look into confidentiality and integrity. And for the same preventive controls, do we have a regular data backup and redundancy? It could be a web application, web filtering, WAF, or it could be any threat intelligence device or threat monitoring device or threat identifying device. So do you have the firmware? Do you have the regular backup of the device? And all the data that is actually passed through them, is it of a sensitive data in nature? So it addresses the confidentiality part of it. And then do you have a IPS or an IDS, which is like a protect when it comes to the cyber security, because it sits between the firewall sits between the internal and external network. So it has to be looked into both the information security aspect of it as well as the cyber security aspect of it. And then, of course, people who would have to have enough security awareness training who are from the technical part of it, and people who are going to be contributing for these efforts on the preventive controls. So that talks about the preventive controls for just that control under the threat management. Then you will have to look into the detective controls. What are the controls that need to be in place? And similarly, the corrective controls, what have to be in place. So it may look very complicated, but when you get the hang of implementing this for each and every control, you may get the hang of it. Then there are some controls which may overlap with the existing control. That is, then you can have a control mapping in place so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So this is probably going to really help you organize to cut short the time when you understand the concept here. Having said that, this is how the Annex A reference is going to be for all practical purpose. So, for example, the 5.1, where this control starts with 5 in section 5. The 5.1, I've taken an extract from the standard itself. So the policy for information security, you need to find out what are the control type is. That's going to be helping as a preventive control for the organization. So you have to put as a preventive control. What does it address? Does it address the confidentiality, availability of and integrity? Yes, it does. So you can have all the three identified. From the cybersecurity concept point of view, does it fulfill the identify, or preventive or protective, or what phases that has to. And then, is it part of the management structure, governance structure? Yes. Or is it part of identity and access management? Whatever that you have identified, you need to put that as an operational security. And then once again, it talks about whether it is a resilience or it could cut across all the four structures of security domain. So this is how, when you implement your new standard, this is how it's going to be looking into. May look a little bit critical or may look very busy, but once when you can get the hang of it, it becomes easy for any organization trying to migrate from 2013 to 22. So now I would probably hand over to my expert, Tanigainathan, to talk about on the controls, which the 11 controls, which has explicitly been added onto the new standard. Over to you, Mr. Tanigai.
Thank you, Ganesh. Good evening, everyone. Hope you had some fresh coffee or tea. It has been a lengthy session. It's not boring. So again, this slide, wherever we have just documented what are the new controls that we have in place as part of 2022. I would like to just give a high-level view on what is that, what this talks about. We might have heard about it, or we might have implemented as part of some other standard. So just want to cover on a high level what this control really talks about. So with regard to Annexure 5, there's three control IDs which is coming under the organizational profile. So we term it as profile. So one is organizational, physical, technical, and people, right? So coming to the threat intelligence. So in 2013, what we normally do is we collect the logs related to security incidents, and we don't post-mortem it, and to some extent we store the logs and for the future purpose, and we don't we don't slice and dice that. And with respect to 2022, it's mandatory that we have to implement a tool. If not, we have to implement a tool, collect the logs, analyze it, to have an effective threat intelligence mechanism so that these threats are mitigated at a root level so that it does not pop up again. So that is something which is being enforced in 5.7. 5.23, information security for use of cloud services. Again, with respect to cloud, what is that we are doing here? Process for acquisition, use, management, and exit from cloud services. So we normally we go to vendor, any vendor, we just procure the the cloud VM instances, and to some extent we say that yes, gentlemen, Google has, or Google or whatever service provider, they do have the security controls in place, and we go by what they say. So this controls, whatever the process have to be documented, whatever the VM instances that we are going to procure, that should be in line with the organization security policy which we have already developed. So we should assure that we should make sure that we have the process documented, and the VM instances, whatever we are procuring, and whenever it's in use, whenever we are managing and we are exiting out of the cloud services, we follow the information security policy, whatever we have drafted for the organization. So that is something which is very critical now here. So moving on to 5.30, it's the ICT readiness. Mr. Ganesh was just highlighting on what is that we need to some extent, organizations really focus on backup business continuity. To some extent, they say that yes, gentlemen, I do have a work from home facility, and that's something which I can take care of it. And really, to be honestly speaking, we need to perform the drills at at the regular intervals and document those findings. Whether it is we have to develop a BAA for our project or for our organization or for that particular application, whichever we deem it as critical, and whether the BAA drills or business DR drills, BCP DR drills collates, or probably it relates, or probably it matches with the RTO and RPO time, matches with whatever we have documented or whatever we have practiced as per the drill, is something which you have to maintain here. So it's basically implemented. So it should be planned, implemented, maintained, and tested based on business continuity objectives, whatever which we have defined as per the organizational policies. So how critical is my application? Which application is very critical? how frequent I need to do the business continuity. So probably a DER exercise, and whether am I is my RTO and RPO is matching with whatever I have documented or whichever is required for the business. So that is something which we have to deep dive on that. So that is something which they have made it mandatory, which they are emphasizing that we have to follow them. Moving on to the next one, that's a physical control, physical security monitoring. Yes, we do have physical security monitoring in most of the premises. But again, they are giving a stress here. Premises shall be continually monitored for unauthorized physical access. Many of the organizations do have CCTV, biometric access control, well and good. So what is new here? So regular review of logs, whether there are unknown people who are trying to gain access to the system, and what is the kind of is my biometric access system what do you say? It's giving a false, probably what we say FDR and FPR. So that criteria is something which we have to check whether my biometric access is appropriate. So whether it should not given, it should not diagnose, or probably it should not recognize a right person as a false person, and it should not allow or probably provide access for a wrong person so that he gains entry. So those what do you say? We have to collate with the vendor. We have to coordinate with the vendor, and we need to do this kind of an analysis for the physical control systems as well. And also, we need to have the CCTV mechanisms in place so that we have the physical premises well under control. So moving on to the next item is configuration management. So what is configuration management? Pretty much we all know. Configuration management includes security configurations for all network devices, whether it be network devices or servers or switches. So again, we need to clearly document, establish what are the security configurations that we need to maintain or which we need to adhere to all those devices. It has to be documented. Not only documented, see, there are 4 critical items which they are saying. See, we all establish, document, we implement. We just miss with the monitoring and review. So that is something which they are emphasizing on. So configurations of all network devices and servers, switches, whatever the equipment that you have or assets that you have, the documents have to be established, documented, implemented, monitored, and reviewed. So that is something which have to be done on a periodical basis as per the organization timelines that you are mentioning over there. So moving on to the 8.10. So that's something, information deletion. So information deletion, yes, we all know we delete the data whenever we just what do you say, user getting offboarded from the organization. We wipe off all the data from the laptop, or a project is being phased out. We wipe off the data of the previous project A. So it's not only that, they are not limiting to that. So what they are saying is for a particular period of time, whichever the data is not required, no longer required, there might be data which might be sitting in the server, which is no longer required. Probably we might be having it for some references. So if that is not required, if it is required, take a backup and store it in the tape, or whatever the backup drive is. If it is not required, go ahead and delete the data which is not required at all, because it will prevent unnecessary backdoor entry and any problems, right? So that is something which they are emphasizing on. And moving on to the data masking 8.11. So this is something, see, one is we normally, when we say data masking, when we are NPI data or PII data is something, when we are exposing the data, that is something the data is being masked. So it can be that, and also when I say data masking, even to one department to another department in the same organization, if the data is not required to be revealed, data masking can be done. Example, the salary data, or the if you take other card data, or for example patient data, those data can also be masked, so that other people or other gentlemen from the same organization is not visualizing that, so that we can ensure that the data is not being revealed to other persons who are not intent to. So that is something which you have to take care of it. And again, coming to the 8.12, which is data leakage prevention, most of the organizations have a DLP solution in place. So again, if not, we have to have the DLP. Again, they are stressing here to have the DLP solution in place for systems, applied systems, networks, and other devices, which actually processes, store, and transmit data. So DLP has to be, so most of the organizations just have the DLP solution only on the firewall side. They leave about the sub constituents like the servers or storage. So DLP has to be in place for wherever the data is being processed, wherever it's being transported, and also in other devices where it's being stored as well. So that's something which we have to take care of it. Moving on to 8.16, which is monitoring activities. So monitoring, yes, we have all the controls in place. Beautiful, fantastic. So we are in comfortable situation that yes, gentlemen, I do have all the tools in place. My environment is safe. No, we have to monitor it periodically. We have to have the right tool and right solution in place so that our security events are being monitored, being connected, being collected and analyzed on a timely fashion, and being alerted to the right person at the right time, so that any threat is being blocked at the very first instance, and also any data breach is also being avoided at that point of time. So moving on to 8.23, so that is something web filtering. So access to the internet, external websites to be restricted, managed to prevent malware attacks. So web filtering, we all know, we provide access, internet access, it will be to the internal persons, or probably whoever have access to our domain data, or probably domain URL, provide access, have the right access control mechanism in the firewall side, or probably WAF, implement the WAF so that all the unwanted DDoS attacks are being prevented. So that, see, all these terminologies we might have heard. It's not something very much new, very new to that. But here they are emphasizing to have this in place as part of 2022. So that is something which I would like to highlight here. Moving on to secure coding. Yes, we all know secure coding. We do follow the secure SDLC process as part of development, software development. And coming to that, it's not limiting to that. So having the segregated environment for development, for UAT, load test environment, and production, and then providing the role-based access control for the respective environments to the right persons. So segregation of duties have to be followed over there. And again, regression testing has to be performed before being released to the production. That is something which we have to take care of that. Are we ensuring that we are using the right TLS mechanism, transporters encryption mechanism, so that our data which is being transmitted on wire is secure? So those are the controls which we have to take care of it while performing. These are the new controls. And again, all these controls are something which we have been following. Again, to reinstate that, we have been following that. But as part of 2022, it's a combination of NIST and PCI DSS. And again, they have upgraded themselves, and they are very much keen on looking on what is and they are stressing upon the implementation part of it, reviewing and monitoring on a periodical interval, so that our environment is very safe from the outside world, right? So moving on to the challenges slide. I won't take much time here. So challenges, what are the challenges that we face in our day-to-day environment, day-to-day life? So understanding new requirements. Yes, we all spoke about threat intelligence, cloud security, privacy, more and cross control objectives. See, 2022 is talking a lot about new threat, what the new policies, new controls. What is that I need to do here? So that is something we have to understand the new requirements. Moving on to the next one. So implement new controls. How am I going to implement it? So what is the process that I need to follow? What is the mechanism that I'm going to follow while implementing the new controls? So that is something which we are saying here. Gap assessment has to have to be done for implementing any DLP mechanism, procuring new hardware. And again, there will be definitely CapEx and OpEx challenges, constraints will be there. So how to take care of that? Which one to be prioritized? Which can be just pushed to the next 3 months, or probably which can be implemented after 6 months of timeline. That is something which you are saying here. And third is documentation and update. Yes, coming to the documentation perspective, again, as previously Ganesh said, 2013 to 2022 is one. I do have policies for 2013. So when I migrate to 2022, do I need to revamp my all the policies? How do I get my policy look and feel without much or look and feel, and collate all those new controls, including new controls, without much of pain for me? That is something. And supplier and vendor assessment. So we do engage suppliers, vendor assessment. Some of the organizations does, some of the organizations doesn't do vendor assessment, vendor security assessment. That is very, very mandatory, which ISO 27001 is making it mandatory. So what to do here? I don't know what to do here. So we are here to help you. We are here to help you on what is it we need to do, what is the data that we have to collect, and so on. So again, I want to just give a high-level view on how can we mitigate the challenges from 1 to 4, whatever we have listed. So for one, to just again to give an overview, perform a kickoff sessions and comprehensive awareness session, so that they are aware of what the threat intelligence talks about, what is the cloud security, what is it they are saying in cloud security, what is the privacy that I need to maintain here, and implementation of a SIM tool, and for the effective security event monitoring, and acting on to the security events appropriately at the right time without much of time delay. And moving on to the priorities, implementation of new controls. Again, yes, so document updation, we do have AI-based documentation. We can redraft wherever it's necessary. And there are AI-based documentation, makes life easier, gets the time easier as well. And we can do the documentation and update. Expert reviews, yes, of course. Stage-wise approach. So organizations who have already 2013, we cannot, on one stage, we cannot just move to the, we cannot migrate to 2022. So we need to plan, or probably we need to take it into a stage approach, and definitely we can have this done without any issues, right? And with respect to supplier and vendor assessment, yes, with most of the vendors, we have done a third-party assessment. Definitely, with that knowledge and with expertise in third-party assessment, we can perform one thing is we can help you to perform a third-party assessment. Second is we can perform third-party assessment, and we can provide you with a report as well. So both we can do. We do have the what do you say? So one is vendor assessment. For example, if you have a vendor A, we does not limit to vendor A. So who are the sub vendors for vendor A? We have to just capture that as well, because it's a chain, it's a supply chain. So we need to see that the supplier is also managing the data appropriately, so that the data which does not happen at the tail end level, right? So moving on to the next slide, challenges, resource constraints. Yes, that is one of the main constraints in most of the organizations. It's a resource constraint is a big problem here. And management support. Most organizations start with the high spirit when they want to deploy 27001, 2022. Yes, it's a good standard. I need to have it. Probably down the line, it gets diluted due to various business issues, or probably new initiatives, or due to some constraints. And training, yes, what do I need to do? I don't have any idea with respect to what I need to do with as part of 2022 implementation. And we are here to provide you the training, so that definitely there are new technologies I need to deploy. So how do I do that? I don't have that. My organization does not have that expertise. Yes, we are here to help you. We do have tech SMEs where we can provide our expertise, and they can be definitely at a cost. We can definitely provide those tech pool SMEs, and they are here to help you with all the help, whatever is required. And again, coming back to 8th, objectives, targets, and KPIs. So what is the objective that I need to, what is that objective that I'm trying to achieve as part of implementation 2022? So correctly drafted. And again, can you please just go to the pop-up window, Ganesh?
Yes, sorry.
It's Vignesh.
Yeah, Ganesh. Yeah, what is that? Yeah, we'll go to, yeah,
exactly, correct. So with respect to objectives, targets, and KPIs, so alignment between business and IT is something which we normally miss here. So objective, whatever the objectives, whatever we draft here, our objectives have to align with the business and the IT. And moreover, now that it's aligned, whether it is cascaded all the way down. So it all boil. It does not boil down. The nth person does not know the what do you say seriousness of having the having the objectives, target KPIs being maintained. So it has to be drilled down all the way to the bottom level. That's something which we have to take care of it. And again, coming back to fifth, how IAM helps with respect to resource constraints. So we do have expertise in providing effective project management. Outsourcing can be done. We can pitch in, and we can have a separate SPOC inducted, and we can take care of whatever the initiatives you are doing, whether it's a migration or new initiative, if we have a resource constraint. Management support, yes, it's something which the management has to be emphasized again in the kickoff session on getting this journey successful from beginning to all the way to the end in implementation of 2022. That's something which we can definitely help with senior management. And again, as I said before, training. We do have tech pool SMEs, and we can take help of them to have the new tool implemented in the organization to have an effective and robust organization. So that's all from my side, and over to Ganesh. Thanks for your time and patience.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Taniga. That was wonderful. So, folks, I think we are just on time. I know we have 15 more minutes, but I will try to walk through of one of the very important case study in the process of migration from 2013 to 22 with one of our prestigious clients. They have an office in India as well as in the US. While we were trying to, they were very early birds. They actually wanted to do 2013. They also wanted to do SOC 2 Type 2. They wanted to migrate into 2022. Everything was all set. There was a management blessings to do so. But during the initiation of the project, the CISO of the organization, had to, move out of the organization on his personal note. So the project was on a standstill. And then all the existing documentation they claim to have said is in good standards. When we did the gap assessment, it was not so. It was probably a lift and shift from the internet, thinking that ISO is nothing but only documentation. Most organizations have this myth saying that if I have the policy and procedure, I may probably get myself certified. Yes, maybe. But it is not going to really help you in ensuring the adequate controls that your organization wants. It may not ensure your business enhancement, because the client is not going to rely just on a policy and procedure. The client and the customer of yours is actually relying on the effectiveness and the design of controls that you have put in place. Document is just only a byproduct for any implementation of ISO 27001, 2013 or 22. So that is exactly what had happened. It was all ad hoc from the internet. And then they were looking for a merger and a demerger session. So there was a lot of pressure on the management saying that they had to get both these compliance best practices and the compliance standard in place. Of course, it was like a hot potato to us. So we had to rejig on the approach. So we did a detailed gap analysis. And then because the CISO and the supporting person within the organization had to leave halfway, we had to do an interim project management. We had to reshuffle the project management. We had to deploy our own experts on the ground as a task force handling the situation of the organization. We had to optimize the resource because they were not forthcoming, because they were all comfortable with the existing CISO, but they are not wanting to work with a younger generation who was nominated in the project. So we had to do a resource optimization. We had to give the guarantee to the management saying that we will take the course the way it has to be. We gave the comfort to the younger generation person who was nominated as the ISM for the organization. And then we had to loop in all the contributors of Information Security Management Committee team. We had to give an in-depth training and awareness session, and then how they can actually bring in all the people on board to get this one, because they were on the verge of amalgamation. So that is one thing. And then because this was a continuous process, we have to make sure that the Plan, Do, Check Act is effectively working. And so there was a team dedicated, even though the project was ongoing, we had to do a continuous monitoring of the project itself, rather than including the ISMS as well. So we had to do the both emphasis of the project as well as the ISMS as a project. So having done that, it was a one-off such things, but we were able to pull up our sleeves and help the customer. But it resulted in a good way, even though it was sometimes we took a knee-jerk reaction. We had to talk to the management to give them the support. We had to do a little bit of a management role with the blessings of the board members as well. So that really helped. And then we instilled the confidence on the people, right from the lower ranks to the upper cadre. So that we were able to achieve that in SOC 2 Type 2 as well. And then even though it was a lift and shift from their internet, we had to tailor it to their organization. The risk that they have done was no way representing their organization. It was some lift and shift from some other company, no way representing this organization. So we had to rejig and tailor it to meet this organization risk, actual risk, factual and business risk. And then we had to set up a compliance team for them who continually have the vigil and monitoring. And whenever they find a new risk, they will definitely report it back into the risk register, which we will take, will help them to go through the plan, do, act, check coming from all the classes. So eventually, even though we had to do an extra of a couple of weeks extra for them on the project, but it was a very good case study. All the probable things that can go wrong for organization is one of these case study. Amalgamations, people leaving the organization not up to the mark, nothing that was required as a requirement for them was not there. It was all interpretation. Then when we had a discussion with the CISO saying that it was all there, but when we found the ground reality was nowhere like that, it was a surprise for us. So anticipate surprises in any projects. If you're doing by yourself, anticipate that this is could be something that you can also look forward. So why you may ask questions, why is that we can rely on us? Is that we have close to about 100 plus customers of meeting various requirements from us. Compliance is one such that we do all the way from baseline security up to the multi-compliances, multi-regulatory requirements. And we have the expertise who can do that. A trustworthy organization with an average age compliance lead auditor age plus 12 years plus of experience. Plus, we are very transparent when we actually work with the client. We don't take a no for a no, because when it is an organization's business that is really going to be affected, we'll have to put it black and white. We just can't take lying low. So something that could affect the business, some risk that could affect the business, we have to really ensure that it is taken down into the risk register rather than covering up on the carpet. So having said that, we have come up with the compliance as a service, as a practice, which I would probably talk about a few about our own organization. So we have a three-pronged approach. One is on the compliance as a service on a foundation, which talks about the basic tool and process baseline. And then we have a next tech evolve, which talks about mapped multi-compliance regulatory framework, which talks about you can have your ISO 27022 mapped to SOC 2 Type 2, mapped to HIPAA, mapped to HITRUST, mapped to FedRAMP. Talk about any privacy controls that in EU GDPR, it could be CCPA or CPRA or whatever, or Canadian privacy law, whatever that you had. We have the multi-pronged that comes in the technology part of a tech evolve. But when it comes to the enterprise, it could be multi-location. The enterprise, large enterprise having multi-location, multiple local and regulatory requirements. So the next gen is what we offer to the customers as a compliance as a service. What gets covered, if you want to know on a high level, we start with the base level, which starts from 01 to 03. It covers the governance. We help the organization to have a governance structure and the management support in place. We ensure that that is drafted and it's made aware to the people. And then we do a compliance risk audit with the multiple, if at all there is a multiple regulatory, legal, and compliance requirements, we do a compliance risk audit and assessment. And then third one is that we develop the policy exclusively from the security point of view as well as the privacy point of view, and ensure how this has to be communicated, to the stakeholders, both internally and externally. So that is on the basic fundamental point of view. When it comes to the tech evolve, the 4 and 5 is the next step that we would help the organization. We have we develop a compliance framework in place where we map multiple regulatory requirements, multiple compliance requirements, and then there has to be a maturity and the monitoring capability that need to have, which is part of the tech evolve, where we monitor on a periodic basis, which is an agreed timeline. Organization could probably acquire new organization. There could be a new regulatory requirements. We need to make sure that that is also effectively monitored and carried out and implemented for the organization. Of course, these are all iterative process. So the Plan, Do, Check Act of the ISO principle also comes into the compliance services. But when you go to the enterprises, the holistic approach, we cover from 6 to 8, which talks about the when the clients, when they ask for RFP support, whether you have the necessary controls in place, necessary privacy controls in place. We engage ourselves as a client rep to respond to their clients when it comes to RFP, when it comes to security and privacy. And of course, when there is a third-party assessment required, we do two-pronged approach. One is the vendor light, where we do the assessment. And then when we do also something called vendor complete. Vendor complete talks about we do the assessment of your service provider and vendor. And then if they lack something, even though you have engaged with them, you're working with them, if they lack something on cybersecurity and privacy initiative, we help those organizations, which is called a vendor complete as a service. That is what we try and do. And then when it comes to the regulator reporting, suppose if there is a GDPR requirement or a California privacy talks about you need to do 72-hour reporting, you need to do an incident response process, breach response process. We help such organizations, provided they go through all the baseline and the tech evolve. So this is an integrated approach. We just can't do only 6, 7, and 8. It has to be a period. A step approach or a phased approach. So we help organizations to achieve this compliances. As more and more compliance are catching up for even a smallest organization, which is a startup. So without this, most organizations cannot survey, because the penalty and the fine that is slapped on organization could probably make them wind up the business and move out of the country that they operate. So compliances as a service is a very serious business, and we are happy to extend it to our existing clients as well as the new clients who are looking out for. Of course, if people are new to this webinar, you may probably look into our website, iaminfo.com. We are the service offering place. We talk about compliances, assess, design, and implement and operate. These are the services that we offer. This is explicitly available on our website, which is www.iaminfo.com. So we are in all the space. We are in 360 of cybersecurity and privacy. So having said that, I would open the floor for any questions. I know I will overshot by about 5 minutes, but it's going to be 2 minutes to 6. I'm opening the floor for any questions. The best questions, I think, I was told by the executive directors and the group directors that the best questions in this webinar would definitely be appreciated, and probably there is a gift or a token of appreciation would reach you as a Diwali gift. So I would request the floor to ask me the question, ask us the question.
Hi Ganesh, and hi everyone at IARM. So I have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Ms. Priya.
Okay. So we have started working on the transition to 2022, and the first question that I got was, as you said, there are the control mapping is different in 2022, and I see that certain controls that are part of the technology controls have an overlap in the organization controls. So is it mandatory for us to group the controls as per the Annexure A classification, or is it okay for us to do a conceptual mapping of controls? For example, threat management is a good example, right? So
yeah. So I had shown. Let me bring that. I know this is probably something that most of our clients. So you're able to see my screen, right? So the
Yes.
examples of threat management control. So what the standard says is that when you are actually evaluating the risks associated with the threat management, look into the domains. Like for example, I've shown the previous the control type. The control is you have a risk if you do not have a threat identification process in place or threat monitoring in place. So it is not only limited to the technological threat. Threat could be of any form. It could be human threat. It could be behavioral type of security threats, whatever it is. But you need to look into the control types, which is of 3 classification. Is the risk identified holistically? And the control that you're trying to put in, is it for of a preventive in nature or a detective in nature or a corrective in nature? It may come into all these 3 forms at any point in time as the threat matures, or if you are able to put the controls much effectively. So look into all these 3 aspects of it. Plus, of course, any risk which may have an impact on confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Availability could be your SIEM tool or a SOAR tool may not be available at that point in time. So that could be an availability. So you'll have to look into these 3 aspects of it. When it comes to the cyber security concept, because this is threat, either could be internal to the organization or through a web application, your web application firewall, if it is not acting the way it has to be, look into those aspects of it, whether that control is you are able to identify whether that is a protection controls in place. Are you able to detect that? Are there controls to respond and recover? So what are the controls? When I say controls, it is always preloaded with your policy or standard operating procedure. So you need to have that descriptively. The standard does not warranty or say anything mandatorily, but if you look into the standard, it says that it is good to have a view, because when you're having an operational capability of 13 in nature, it is good to know which control that you have put in is collating and merging between the information security control and the cyber security control. It is not mandatory. It will help the organization to find out the one is the design and then the effectiveness of the controls implemented. So it is not mandate.
Okay, so I may very well decide to group some of those in the technology controls under threat intelligence in the organizational controls and present it together, right?
Yes, it may overlap here and there. As long as the controls are working, doesn't matter how it is represented, but you cannot miss it. You cannot negate. But the standard also says now, because of the standard 22 talks about the change in the project of ISMS, project change. They're talking about if anything that may impact the information security management system at the holistic for the organization, if there is any change, it has to be well documented. There has to be a change control, a change management in place, exclusively for the ISMS. That's a new control that they've implemented. It cannot be add-on, right? So you have to have a documented control in place, identify the risk associated with the change in this ISMS. It could be, understanding your external internal party. Even for a threat intelligence, if you're going to be having an implementation like a firewall or SIEM, identify the change and document them and have a project management place, and then only effect the change. So that is made as a requirements in the standard of 2022. So that is the submission that I would want to do.
Thank you, Ganesh. I have other questions, but I would like
to give the
opportunity to the other participants. Yes, sorry.
Sure. I think you can write on the chat just in case.
Yeah. She can participants can share the questions in chat, and we are glad to help you. You can take it offline and we can just provide the responses.
Yeah, Ms. Priya, but you're allowed to pick up only one gift. Yeah,
yeah, I got it, Ganesh.
Okay, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Priya. I think we are waiting for others to ask the questions. It will be very, very informative if we respond right, and others can also pick up that information.
Okay, so one of the other things, that is news to me, that this changes to ISMS is mandatory documentation, because as per the guidelines, if I remember right, I didn't see anything that it's mandatory, but it's good to know, because I was wondering that it could be just added as an ad hoc statement in our policy or something. So
No, it
thanks
is,
for the info.
yeah, the new standard says that you need to have it in place. Any changes, that is something on the emphasis that they've actually made.
Okay. And the other thing that I observed was the performance evaluation of ISMS. So I see that in 2022, it's made more extensive in sense
Yeah, more,
that
they made more extensively. They
yeah.
wanted to ensure just not only internal audits, they want to have a periodic performance review done on the effectiveness of the information security management system.
So
That
what
they
are
have made
the,
explicit.
is it through metrics we can implement that kind of extensive implementation, or how do we achieve that?
It depends on the each and every organization. Suppose there are multiple tools that are available. In fact, IAM is actually coming up with an AI-based tool exclusively for this compliance matrix, where based on your objectives, the objectives are very, very key for organization. In fact, that is also something. Any change is going to be happening for the information security objectives. That effectiveness has to happen. So it can be automated with any some routine, or if you have a native product which you use in your organization, you can do that, or a simple Excel tracking is also fine, as long as you have a periodic review of those controls. Because the reason is that information security was a little bit not so active, but they have now added privacy and also cybersecurity. Mostly all the controls which needs every nanoseconds to be monitored is on the cybersecurity controls. And the cloud is something that that they have included extensively. The users of the cloud, people leaving the organization, and your responsibility of a data on your cloud, whether your own data or your cloud data, you are fully responsible for that. So anything on the cybersecurity has to have much of vigilance. So that's the reason most of the organizations would have to rely on a tool, and human interventions and ad hoc scheduling for performance monitoring may not help you on a long run. Maybe till your next surveillance it may help, but over the next after completion of the first year of 22, the first surveillance, probably you also think that it is good to have an automated tool, to help you with these.
So one last question that I have is, I'm not sure how much sense this makes. So certain places the guideline says that documentation is mandatory, and certain places it says that documented evidence is mandatory. And the structure we have right now is that most of the controls have a policy as well as a procedure. But now that I dig deeper into that, I see that maybe a bunch of controls can be grouped as a policy, but we can have different procedures for each of those controls. So is that approach allowed, or is it mandatory to have a policy and a procedure for most of the controls? How does it work? What do we mean by documentation and documented evidence mandatory? What's the
okay? So in 2013, if you see, wherever they claim documented information, which means that has to have a document. You need to have a documentation. That is mandatory. There is no relaxation on it. So policy is a documented information which is mandatorily required. Without a policy, you cannot go for any procedures in place. For example, let's take for the sake of everybody, the organization would say, will declare saying that the organization has implemented, has made the efforts or shall make the efforts to have threat intelligence controls in place. For example, just only take a high level, threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is a very high level of control in place. There are subdivisions in threat whether it is for the tool related or the infrastructure related or people related behavioral pattern that you need to have. So for each and every such control that you're putting in place for threat intelligence, that is a design factor. The control efficiency factor that you're putting for has to have a procedure how this will be operated. The reason why we are saying the procedure to operate it is how it will be operated. You need to have a standard operating procedure to operate that. Who will operate? Whether there is a segregation of duty, whether they have enough tools to monitor, whether they have the time, do they know, are they aware of how to operate the tool? Do they have enough training? Does it have a multi-factor authentication? So if you look into the 93 controls, will self-qualify for each and every control so that it will be 93 by 93 matrix if you are looking to all the controls. So that is how the complexity of the new standard comes into. That is how we have, found from most of the controls that it could be the multiples of, it could be, it is not that it will be, it could be somewhere 93 by 93, if not 93, at least 93 into some of the cyber security effective controls. You may have to multiply to find out for one control, I am starting from all the control classes, right, from 5.1 all the way to the last structure. So one control, do I have the policy for that control? Do they have the procedure for the control? Do I have segregation of duty? Do I have the two-factor authentication which is going to be working? Do I have a person onboarding who's qualified to do that when he's leaving the organization? Does it, everything for that one particular control has to be validated. That is how it is coming as a repetitive process. So policy exists, the procedure for each and every activity, it need have to be running into pages. It has to be very, very crisp so that the person who is looking into the procedure can read through it and operate. That's exactly what the standard means. So, and the evidence is when you write a procedure, the procedure would have an outcome, right? And that has to be classified as an evidence. For example, if you say segregation of duties for this procedure, you are nominating the network engineer to be the sole person. Whether in his description of duties, is he given the job description that he is supposed to be performing this function? And if he is going to be given that, has he got the training? And if he is going to be an administrative cadre in nature, does he have multi-factor authentication in place? So there is a cascading effort for that control, and that is how the evidences has to be made or shown to your third-party auditors. Forget about the certification. This is how the standard wants you to work as a effective controls for your organization.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Okay, I think we are 10 minutes past the scheduled time. But if there are no questions, or if you want to ask questions separately, please feel free to write it to me. I can take other questions. Yes.
Excuse me, this is Vignesh here. There is a question from Pradeep in the chat.
Yes. I'm new to this ISO 27000. Please share few key points need to take care, planning to get this one for our organization. Yes, Mr. Pradeep, I think we will definitely talk in length in a separate session. For sure, we will engage. We'll have a discussion. We'll plan a session, and then we'll take you walk you through.
Hi, Mr. Ganesh. Hello.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your brief session. I have a very small question.
Yeah.
Actually, our organization is already certified in 27K2013. So,
Okay.
in couple of months, we have surveillance audit.
Okay.
We have already certified statement of applicability document. Okay, can we go with this framework, like 27K2022 framework, like that statement of applicability with this framework, like all the control types, like control name, control type, information security for properties, and the cyber security concepts, operational capabilities, security domains, like that. Can we go with this framework, or is it mandatory to go with this, or we can go with as usual?
Okay, so you have got your 2013 statement of applicability.
Yes.
Now, in the next 2 months, if I understand, you are going to go for, during the surveillance, you want to migrate it to 2022. That is what you're asking.
Yes, sir. Yeah. We want to migrate to 202.
Okay, so you have got all the preparatory work. You have got your risk identified. You have done a gap assessment already, correct? With regards
No, sir. Actually, the gap assessment and everything, it's not done. So, as you said, as you explained, first we need to go for the gap assessment, and then we need to go for this and these activities, like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for this migration, 2022 migration, is this required, or still we need? I mean, still we have time for migration. Until that time, we can continue with the as usual statement of applicability. it happens?
No, you have time for migration, not an issue.
Okay.
You cannot go for a new certificate. You cannot go for 2013 new certification. That is not at all allowed anymore.
Yes, sir.
You can go for
As you
surveillance.
already explained in your first.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So what you can do is that see, the 2022 is a paradigm shift actually.
Yes, sir.
So you need to evaluate. You need to actually do a gap assessment because they have added the new cybersecurity controls, new privacy controls also in place. So you probably may not have implemented the controls in place. So that would come as a gap for you. So that gap is already there. Your risk register or your risk information, risk management framework is going to change. Correct enough?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very
Your
true.
risk information framework would have to now include saying that our organization, when evaluating any data or information, shall also look into the cyber security threats and the privacy related threats for the organization. So that two statement on a high level you will include, na? So which means your risk is going to change, your statement of applicability is going to change, and then in your statement of applicability, you need to have 4 columns, which talks about is the risk because of the regulatory changes, is the risk because of the legal changes, is the risk because of your new standard, or is the risk because of operational. So that 4 column you'll have to satisfy. Or based on that only, then you are coming into the operational capabilities. That is only last part. So before that, you need to do all these things.
Okay, okay. So without migration, can we proceed with the same framework, sir? Like as there is a time for migration, right? So till the time, can we continue with that framework?
I would request who is your third-party certification agency? You is it?
DQS, sir.
Okay, I think rather than me, because I am not qualified to answer that question, you can probably ask your TQ or BVQ, whoever it is, and ask them. We would want to continue with 2013 this year because of want of time. Post surveillance, by next surveillance, we would migrate to 2022. That is something that can be achieved.
Okay.
If you, for the sake of certification, if you want to have, I will not comment anything on it. But for the sake of implementing good cybersecurity controls, you need definitely good amount of time, as much as like 5 to 6 months. The implementation can be done in 3 to 4 with the AI controls and things like that. You can do it in maybe 12 weeks. But for you to demonstrate that these controls are working and everybody has accepted, everybody is understanding, an organization is understanding, that takes time, because they need to suck in the knowledge, they need to contribute to you. You need to make sure that some of the metrics may not be working, some may be working. So that demonstration takes time.
Yes, sir, I understood. Okay, sir. So I will coordinate with my certification body, TQS.
Sure. Any help you can always ask us. We are more than happy to help you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, so I think if we don't have any questions, are we getting any questions, further questions?